right, here we go. Look at that flippy screen. Golly, how did I live without that thing? Look at it. It's like, that's good stuff. Let's address the elephant in the room. Last week, some of you guys noticed it immediately. It's pretty obvious. I'm not shooting Nikon anymore. And I know a lot of you guys don't care. It's not a thing. But if you're like me, you start watching somebody on YouTube, you notice they're using the same equipment you're using, you kind of get drawn to them, you can relate to them because they're using the same stuff, and then they stop using the same gear you're using. That happened to me. I used to watch Jared Polin, he switched. Matt Granger at one time freaked us out. He finally came back to Nikon. My buddy Mark Smith, who I absolutely adore, hung it up for Nikon and started shooting Sony. I don't know why it's such a big deal. I have no idea, but it seems to matter to a lot of you guys, and I feel like I should just address it. Let me give you a little backstory. First and foremost, I wasn't introduced to Nikon because my grandfather shot Nikon or because I had some affinity for it for years. About 9 years ago, I bought my first DSLR camera. It was a Nikon D3100. I didn't do research at all. I just went into Best Buy. I read the little display at the bottom of the cameras. The Nikon D3100 had 24 megapixels, I think, and the camera next to it, which I think was a Canon, had 20 megapixels. So I bought the Nikon. That was it. Zero research beyond that. Fast forward over the years, I started buying more lenses. I bought several more camera bodies from the D7200, follow the chain all the way up to recently the Z9. When I bought the Z9, it blew my mind. Everything you've heard about it is 100% true. It's an amazing camera, 45 megapixels, incredible focus system. Nothing bad to say about that camera at all. So why in the heck would I get rid of that Z9 and switch to Sony? Some of you guys may recall my wife has been on my case for nearly a year now to swap brand. She has said several times, why do you feel so loyal to Nikon? And loyalty isn't exactly the word. I think what it is you make a commitment to something and you just start kind of defending it. Like, all right, I got this because it's so good in these areas. And I never really allowed myself to try other gear until YouTube came along. A friend of mine allowed me to use his Canon R5 for about a week or so. I can't remember how long I had it. But the moment I started shooting that Canon R5, I knew Nikon was behind. All right, so I've only gotten a couple of shots so far, and I'm gonna tell you, God, I hate even admitting this. How did it know where I was looking? I mean, yeah, put it in frame. The bird's there. It grabs it. I didn't have to move any focus points. Once it grabbed the bird, it grabbed it big. Then it started micro, like grabbing the eye. I mean, what kind of Harry Potter stuff is going on inside there to do that? I don't get it. And that was about a year ago, 9 months ago or something like that. And I was extremely tempted to sell all of my Nikon gear at that time and go buy myself a Canon R5. But I didn't because rumors, the Z9 was coming. I had to wait and see what that Z9 was going to be. Over the next 8 months, a lot of my friends got the A1. They got more Canon R5s, and I'm watching them take beautiful images. Now, my images were good too. I was doing just fine with that D850, then the Z6 II. No complaints with the D850, one of the best, or it is the best DSLR I think that's ever been made. Fantastic camera. When the Z9 arrived, one of my worst traits about myself kind of kicked in, and that is I am incredibly impatient, especially when it comes to spending money. I can't stand giving someone my money or tying up my money and waiting. And I know a lot of you guys are out there still waiting on your Z9. I know that people are waiting on lenses. And only if you're a Nikon Professional Services member do you even get your stuff when you order it. I mean, 6 months, a year. That may or may not have anything to do with Nikon. Maybe every brand's that way. But when I get ready to spend money, there's nothing I hate more than just sitting back and waiting for something to arrive. It took me about 30 to 60 days. I think I was kind of lucky. I ordered from a small camera shop and I got my Z9 quick, relatively quick. Then I ordered the 400mm 2.8. I applied for Nikon Professional Services. For some reason, they approved me. I'm not a professional. I own a bunch of camera gear and I love taking pictures of birds, but I paid them the $299 and here you go. I'm now a NPS member. I ordered the 400 2.8 through Nikon Professional Services. I did it with Hunt's Photo and Video, which, by the way, they are my go-to camera shop. I recommend you guys click the link below. If you want to help me out, go order some stuff from Hunt's Photo. I ordered my 400mm 2.8. My contact said, look, man, we've gotten several of them in and none of them have your name on it yet. And I know that you ordered yours before anyone else. He saw my NPS order. So I started calling Nikon like crazy, like an impatient little child, and was begging for them to call me back. I never heard anything from them. I sat on hold, I left messages, I sent emails, and I was getting a little frustrated. And all this time, I'm just being impatient. It's just who I am. I'm not proud of it, okay? During that time of waiting and watching as other people are getting their equipment, my wheels start turning. I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I putting myself through this? I waited on a Z9. I waited on the 400mm. I could go just buy another camera and be using it and be having fun with it. I didn't want to buy F-mount adapted glass to put on the Z9, even though it works fantastic. I wanted to be moving forward. I didn't want to be spending my money on backwards compatible components. So I started reaching out to friends. I started reaching out to people that I trust. I started with a guy that I go to dinner with a couple to 3 times a month, and that's Charlie. Charlie and I go out and shoot every now and then, and he bought himself a Sony A1. He was a Nikon user like me. And I knew that he was going to order that Z9, and he didn't. He went and ordered the Sony A1, and he got a 400mm 2.8. And I just picked his brain about it. He let me use his for a little while, and he said something that just stuck with me. He said, Josh, Nikon just caught up. Sony's been doing this for a couple of years now. That iFocus, the faster read speeds, Nikon just caught up. Why don't you just go ahead and switch to Sony? They have all this stuff. They've had it for a couple of years now, and they're going to continue to make great stuff. And that just stuck in my head. But I didn't. I went ahead and got the Z9, and I kept moving forward. Then I reached out to a good friend of mine who I really trust, and that's Mark Smith. He's one of the greatest bird photographers on YouTube. His Osprey images just blow my mind. I mean, just unbelievable stuff. So I reached out to him, I called him, and you know, YouTube guys, that's what we do. We talk to each other. Mark called me back and we talked about it over a couple of different phone calls, and he said, Josh, look, you know, you can't go wrong with either one of them. He kind of walked me through the whole thing about, look, you're a bird photographer, a 600 f4 is really what you want. A 400 2.8 is great, but I mean, we're talking about 200mm. Okay, I know the argument's gonna start in the comments about the 400 2.8's got the teleconverter. I'm not arguing all that. It's fantastic. But here's what would have happened in my little bird brain. That 400 2.8 would have showed up in my house. I would have started using it. And then that 600 f4 would have got announced. And I can't afford to own both of them. So I would have either gone back and sold that 400 2.8 and then waited another 6 months to get that 600 f4. I didn't want to go through it again. I was tired of the wait. I cannot stress that enough. I was tired of the wait. Let's talk about the technical stuff. First of all, I didn't buy Sony because of the Sony A1 or because of the 600 f4. What convinced me was this little thing. If you guys recall, my wife, she wanted to get back into taking pictures. I said, yeah, that's great. You know, just get what you want. And she ordered the Sony A7 IV, got the little 100 to 400, incredibly light, versatile little rig. Now it's in my house, and I'm a camera guy. I start tinkering with the menus. I start messing around with the autofocus. And I'm telling you, this little thing blew me away. I cannot stress how impressed I was with this little camera. 33 megapixels. I focus on birds, animals, humans. The image quality was fantastic, which, let's talk about image quality. I don't care what camera you buy today, you're gonna get incredible image quality. But there was one thing that just put me over the edge. As a YouTuber, I do a ton of video. I mean, it's ridiculous. I'm putting out a video every single week. I'm out in the field recording hours upon hours of footage every single week. And then I have to sit down in front of that computer and I've got to figure out how to put this whole thing together. And what started to happen is I would notice that the Nikon footage, specifically the Z6 II, which I was using for all the B-roll and all the, following us around out in the woods, just didn't stand up to the Sony footage that was in Katie's camera. Full caveat, the Z9, that footage was incredible too. So I started doing my homework. I'm not a video professional. I just wanted to see what it was that I was missing. Well, come to find out, the Nikon Z6 II shoots in what's called 8-bit, and the Sony A4 shoots in 10-bit. You guys are probably thinking, who gives a crap? It's 2 bits. What kind of difference can 2 bits make? Well, I thought the same thing. 10-bit is 4 times more information than 8-bit is in video. An 8-bit video, if I'm remembering correctly, it's like 256 RGB, parts per channel or whatever it is. When you go to 10-bit, it's over 1,000 little parts per channel. Bottom line, the image quality and the editing ability, the workability in the Sony system was so much better. I don't know how to quantify it, but if you edit video, you edit 10-bit and then you go back and edit 8-bit, it's like editing RAW versus going to JPEG. You can just do more stuff with 10-bit internal recording. Sony had it, a $2,500 camera. Sony has it. It took Nikon the Z9 to get it. Okay, let's talk about that autofocus system though. This little camera, including the cameras prior to it, the A9, the Bird autofocus system is fantastic. If you shoot Nikon for a while and you're kind of stuck with that equipment like I was, and you hear all these people talk about advanced eye autofocus, and then you finally go use a Sony and you see what it's about, your mind's blown. Your mind is absolutely blown. Just notice, I mean, even with tiny little birds that are 20 yards away, the autofocus system, once it locks on the bird, immediately finds the eye, starts tracking it. It doesn't matter if it's a light-colored bird or a dark-colored bird, it finds the eye on the bird and it does it flawlessly. Okay, flawlessly is an exaggeration. There's many times I've put it on the bird and it doesn't go straight to the eye, but it never went to the eye with the Nikon. I started noticing consistently sharper images. You zoom into them at 100%, you start to notice that these things are pretty freaking amazing. And that's wonderful. It makes life easier using a camera like that in the field. I believed a lot of the hype out there that Sony ergonomics were garbage, their menu systems were garbage. I didn't know though, I hadn't owned one prior to that, so I hadn't gone into the menus and discovered that for myself. Now that I have them, at first it was very intimidating because it uses a lot of language that I haven't seen in cameras before. I figured it out. You sit down with it for an hour or so and you figure it out. No different than what I did 9 years ago when I bought my first Nikon. As far as ergonomics are concerned, it's not that different. The shutter button's in the same spot. You adjust the shutter speed in the same spot and the aperture in the same spot. And you program the other buttons the way you want them. Is it a smaller camera? It's identical size to the Nikon Z6 II. Battery life. I shot all day today with the Sony A1. Never changed the battery. I think it still has like 40% left and I'm sure I took over 1,000 images. All of that stuff is conjecture. It's just things to argue about. Here's what matters most. Find something that works for you, buy it. If you think it doesn't work, get something else. But don't just buy into what people are telling you on YouTube. I'm just a guy. I'm not a professional. I'm just a dude that bought some consumer electronics that work for me. It's that simple. For me, it's about finding the piece of equipment that works best from the top all the way to the bottom. And if you understand where I'm coming from as a YouTuber, someone that spends a lot of time editing video, and I photograph birds. I'm not doing street photography. I'm not out there photographing kids. I'm doing the most difficult photography, and you guys are watching because you are doing some of the most difficult photography there is. Bird and wildlife photography is not easy. When you have gear that makes it easier for you, it's just refreshing. It's refreshing. So it's official. No more Nikon. 100% all of my equipment is Sony, and I wish I would have done it sooner. Honestly, I wish I would have done it sooner, knowing what I know now. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. No more gear talk. I'm done talking about the Switch. Every now and then, yeah, you'll see me talk about a few pieces of gear, but this is a contentious thing, and it just drives me nuts. I hope that you guys are tagging along with me on these little adventures, not because I own the same camera you own, but because we're doing the same thing. We're photographing birds, we're spending time out in nature, and I hope to see you the next time when I go out and photograph some more birds.